Sorry about my toplessness, but I'm trying to let my new tattoo of the Bodhi tree air out. Yesterday, as part of this job application for being a tutor, it's like a SAT prep type place, I had to take a 3 hour SAT like exam. And I noticed afterwards that kind of had a mild headache, I was exhausted, and I was especially grumpy, disrupting my newfound equanimity. And so thinking about this, I realized, oh, sorry, Chopin's a little loud. Um, I realized that being 3 hours inside my head, which is essentially what was happening, especially with the math section in the new SAT. I don't remember uh, it being that hard, or maybe I'm just getting dumber in my age. But yeah, being in my head for 3 hours, it did, did not do good things for my disposition with respect to interacting with other people. Um, Reminds me of a quote by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I was thinking about this too. It's interesting that my French teacher in high school, Mrs. Breen, or Miss Breen, I guess, she gave me the French name Jean-Jacques. And later on, I found that Rousseau was one of my favorite uh, philosophers for a lot of reasons. But anyway, Rousseau says something to the effect that compassion is something natural in human beings, and it's only through artificial means that we learn to ignore it, that we become desensitized to it. He talks about how when there's a street brawl, that the first people who get involved to try to break it up are like the illiterate, uh, maids and housewives, whereas the educated philosophers are cowering under their desks. And that little passage always cracked me up because it rang so true to me. That philosophers are so inside their heads that they don't know how to really feel for other people. Um, this reminds me of another philosopher. I quoted Bataille, the same quote I think in an earlier post, but it was one of my favorite quotes, so I'll repeat it. That Bataille writes, "Your unhappy philosopher needs a drink, like your working man needs soap. You get dirty by working, just like you get sober by doing philosophy." And that also rang very true to me, that the more philosophy I did, the more sober, so to speak, I got, the more isolated and rational I became, and distancing myself from other human beings. And I wanted a drink to get out of myself, to socially engage. Alcohol, the great social lubricant, as my friend Bill Lewis used to say. But that is a very sad statement about what philosophy has become. And I think it's key to remember that in that Bataille quote, he says that it's your unhappy philosopher who needs a drink. Your happy philosopher, and remember, a philosopher literally means a lover of wisdom. Your happy philosopher is like the Buddha, big smile on his or her face, because they're not isolated and disengaged with the world. There's this misconception that I've addressed before that meditation is this kind of ascetic practice where you're a monk on a mountaintop in a temple, just divorced from reality. And granted, a lot of meditation has become something like this, unfortunately. But at its core, at its root, the Buddha understood meditation as a way for people to be happy. And for people to be happy, they need to be together. We are, after all, as Aristotle famously said, political animals. We're social by nature. If you look at other animal species, there are some animal species that are kind of solitary, but most mammals, it seems like, are social, and we are among them. Um, but unfortunately, things like technology, uh, and really that's a big one, are isolating us from one another. It's really sad to see how people are lost in their cell phones and not engaged with one another. It's like a bunch of automatons. I remember last summer in Seoul, the most wired city in the world. Everyone on the subway is just on their little cell phones with their headphones on, oblivious to the rest of the world. And the U.S. is, just as bad, or maybe almost as bad. Seoul is pretty cray-cray, as my daughter Peyton would say. But going back to meditation, I think, again, there's this misconception that you're isolating yourself from the world, but really you're learning in meditation that this separation of your head, your mind, being inside your head and compared to the outside world, what 20th century philosophers might call something like the phenomenological reduction, that this Cartesian cogito, this kernel of consciousness that is processing external information, that's completely false. That the body is always already, to use a postmodern term that I really hate, but applies here. The body is always already part of the mind and extends and connects us to the rest of the world, to the universe. So compassion is not something that should be forced. That we are interconnected. That is the truth, and that's what meditation teaches us. And we get practice at training our bodies to recognize that they're not separate from our minds, that they're not tools to be used for our enjoyment or pleasure. That it's an extension of our consciousness that can permeate all of reality. And I think when this works well, when you can develop a kind of flow. Once you have practiced enough that that artificial separation of mind from world is dissolved. That instead of separating ourselves from the world through thinking or philosophizing or any type of kind of introspective endeavor, you can create things that flow and connect people. I think that's what the most beautiful artistic creations are about. It's a dissolution of that barrier of mind from world, where one is able to communicate and flow. And this is where Bataille's notion of communication rings so true to me. But I still have mixed feelings about that, as I've suggested. But this idea of communication as this flow between an individual and the world, where everything just fits, like Radiohead says, a jigsaw puzzle falling into place. It just all works out. The most beautiful works of art are a matter of somehow capturing, and capture isn't the right word. It's not about holding on to it. I don't know how to describe it. But anyway, I feel like I'm moving further and further off topic. The main point is that I think it's really important for people to get outside of their heads, and that meditation, ironically, because people think it's a matter of being in your head, is a way to practice exactly doing this. All right, thanks.